one caress, not a blade of grass. This land is all I know. We're gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow and never break. Our fathers came here and they lived and died here, and we ain't moving nowhere. Make no mistake, 'cause we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one grass, not a blade of grass. We love the open country of the Rupununi and the Essequibo. Take time on it, though we may criticize it. This is our own, we love it, and we need to keep it. We have that right, so we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one grass, not a blade of grass. So we ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. We are a peaceful people, struggle is always struggle, and we don't look for trouble, just ask around. But when outside faces from foreign places talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. We ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. This land is all I know. We gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow and never break. Our fathers came here and they lived and died here, and we ain't moving nowhere. Make no mistake, 'cause we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one grass, not a blade of grass. We love the open country of the Rupununi and the Essequibo. Take time on it, though we may criticize it. This is our own, we love it, and we need to keep it. We have that right, so we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one grass, not a blade of grass. So we ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. peaceful people. Struggle is we struggle, and we don't look for trouble. Just ask around. But when outside faces from foreign places talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. We ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one caress, not a blade of grass. This land is all I know. We gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow and never break. Our fathers came here and they lived and died here, and we ain't moving nowhere. Make no mistake, 'cause we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one grass, not a blade of grass. We love the open country of the Rupaluni and the Essequibo, the time on night. Though we may criticize it, this is our home, we love it, and we need to keep it. We have that right. So we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river.
Thank you, honorable members. Please be seated. So we were off to a very good start this morning. A couple of shameful and so came in. Please let us reduce those. And we'll now hear from the honorable member, Mr. Ronald Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, good afternoon. To all my colleagues of this noble assembly, a prosperous new year. To the hardworking but inadequately compensated, of course, staff of the Ministry of Finance, thank you for your sacrifices towards another budget. To all my other Guyanese brothers and sisters, I say to you, brace yourselves and don't be swindled by the numbers. Don't expect much as another budget for the elites is presented. Mr. Speaker, before I proceed to my presentation on the debates for Budget 2024, allow me to make two comments. The speaker from the government side who spoke just before the break for lunch did a folly of himself by comparing the APNO AFC 2015 budget allocation for capital expenditure to the 2024 allocations. What that speaker, Mr. Speaker, failed to tell the people of this country is the figure of the total budget for 2015 as compared to the now much touted 1.146 trillion Guyana dollars. In 2015, the budget was just for 5 months as compared to this one, which is for 12 months. 2015 budget was 221 billion, a mere fraction of 1.146 trillion. So, Mr. Speaker, even a primary school student would understand the comparison attempted by Mr. Indar, the honorable member. I say no more. Mr. Speaker, I would hope that the government speakers have so much to say. This is my second comment. This is in relation to the honorable member, Mr. Hamilton. Mr. Speaker, as a father, as a teacher, as a hard-working public servant of this country, I strongly object to the reference of persons' children. I would hope that the government speakers have so much to say in this $1.46 trillion budget that time will not permit them such utterances, but much to the dismay of those glued to their televisions and smartphones as they listen to this year's budget debates. Mr. Speaker, it is no secret that the cost of living and the hardships associated with such have forced the ordinary, hard-working, and decent citizens of this nation to the brink of marginal existence and survival. It takes great skill and resilience to survive in the current environment, where most consumers in the streets of Georgetown and elsewhere will tell you in no uncertain terms that the prices of basic commodities have risen by far more than 2%. Inflation rate that was reported in this National Assembly. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure that every Guyanese household will tell us that they had to expend more than 6.5% of their incomes to meet the basic needs of food, transportation, and rent. A cursory understanding of economies tell us that once households are forced to spend more to meet the basic of daily survival, a reduction of disposable income and savings follow. In other words, the future of such households seems very bleak and heading into a very uncertain times. Mr. Speaker, of all the budgets presented by the PPC government since 2020, this is the only one I will change just one word of the theme presented by the Honorable Minister of Finance. Should I rephrase, the Honorable Senior Minister in the Office of the President with responsibility for finance. Mr. Speaker, a classical theme for Budget 2024, staying the course, building prosperity for some. The only word I'll change here is all to some. The PVC is well on course as they build prosperity for their elites and well-known 3 Fs, something Guyanese have grown weary of. Mr. Speaker, it is alarming that the government prioritizes infrastructure over social policies, and we know from reports and experiences that this creates fissures for something known to many of us, a word that is not permitted to be used in this National Assembly. The figure for our national budget, now in the trillion, does not necessarily impress the ordinary man, especially now that majority of Guyanese are still crying out as they struggle to make ends meet. Something the honorable members of the government may not agree with, But in order for them to agree with this, you must attempt yourself to live on the minimum wage as many Guyanese do every single day of their lives. Mr. Speaker, one would question whether the government priority is on our people or just a highlighted or selected few. Selected, of course, by their own bigoted policies. Mr. Speaker, the government came to the National Assembly last year with additional financial papers. As my colleague mentioned earlier, the Honorable Director of Finance. Is this the real budget? This is a clear indication that the ordinary man must not be duped to expect any massive ease in the struggle of his daily life. Budget 2024 is another disaster to the poor, but of course, an illuminated Disney World for a few and their friends. Mr. Speaker, the figures in any budget is critical and important. What is equally important, Mr. Speaker, is efficiency and responsible spending, compounded by accountability and transparency. Something on which most of my presentation will be based as it relates to the Barima-Waini region. I am not, Mr. Speaker, too fancy about the figures budgeted. What we are fancy about is whether or not our people benefit from those allocations. Mr. Speaker, contemporary wisdom tells us that prosperity is a multidimensional and multifaceted concept. The World Bank Group tells us that prosperity speaks to an enhanced human well-being, measured by achieved economic growth and development. Enhanced human well-being, balanced with a quality environment. Again, I say, is this a reality for many Guyanese? The answer is a resounding no. Building prosperity for some. Of course, they will say yes. Prosperity also takes into consideration human element of development and concerted efforts at poverty eradication and expanding human freedoms, social cohesion, justice, and maintaining adequate standards of living. Again, building prosperity for a few. Mr. Speaker, I turn my attention to an issue that is affecting the residents of Region 1, and to be specific, the villagers of Chinese landing. Mr. Speaker, another sore issue, one might describe as blatant disrespect of indigenous brothers and sisters in Chinese landing. Contrary to the position of the Honorable Minister of Amerindian Affairs, the Honorable Pauline Sukai, the villagers never seek to cease mining totally. They seek to cease mining in part of their village called Kasiwini. I want to quote, Mr. Speaker, from the article presented here by IACHR. The petition indicates that the members of the indigenous Carib community of Chinese landing are facing threats, harassment, and acts of violence in the context of their opposition to activities in their lands. The representatives allege repetitive incidents of threats and harassment which would occur daily or regularly, inform and acts against persons in particular vulnerability, such as aggression to a young man, attempted rape of a minor, and threat with a knife against an elder person, as well as the extensive use of firearms with firing incidences. Firing incidents. The beneficiaries have also received collective death threats, reportedly perpetrated by mind workers. For example, the Tushao, who is the leader of this community, was allegedly warned that if the village wins its lands back, the miners would not leave easily and people would die. It is, Mr. Speaker, a national embarrassment that this government, through the Ministry of Amerindian Affairs, may want to distance themselves from the side of the residents of Chinese Landing. I trust that when the Honorable Minister of Amerindian Affairs and her time comes to speak, she will bring much clarity to the issue. And of course, decide on which side of the fence she stands as it relates to the livelihood of the indigenous people of this nation. Mr. Speaker, there are many more information detailed in this document that I'm willing to share. If time permits, I'd like to return and quote a few more. Mr. Speaker, this level of disregard and disrespect for our indigenous people, I believe, has seeped into the halls of this august chambers with offensive names calling, baseless accusation of our elected indigenous representatives with misappropriation of public funds. Mr. Speaker, name calling will not deter us, even as we challenge those on the government side to bring the evidence. For we were never, at least we were never escorted by persons in specific color of clothing, with the flexibility and free will of our limbs restricted. Staying the course, building prosperity for some, a classical theme. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2024 measures does not adequately address any serious attempts at prosperity for all. Since the PPC civic government took office in 2020, the allocation and distribution of state resources have been skewed in favor of some. This budget proposal reinforces the inequality and inequity that is the character of this PPC government approach to developmental planning and implementation of projects and policies. Mr. Speaker, the indigenous population of Guyana as of 2022 was projected to be approximately 10.5% of the total population and the fourth largest ethnic group in Guyana. International Working Group for Indigenous Affairs 2022 as the source. As a minority group, Mr. Speaker, indigenous contributions to national development is phenomenal. We are in the front lines to fight against climate change. We are in the front lines in the protection of Guyana's territorial integrity, and our lands and resources are in the front lines of the economic and social transformation of this country. Mr. Speaker, we are happy that the Honorable Minister and his government has allocated $9 billion to be spent on the development in indigenous communities across Guyana. While we are happy, and we welcome...
I'm happy to give you some more time, but someone would have to move that motion.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Comrade Speaker. I do move that the honourable member be given 5 minutes to conclude his presentation.
Thank you, Honourable Member. You have 5 minutes to conclude.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I like to quote from the Auditor General's report of 2023 as it relates to Region 1. The regional administration, this is on page 197. The regional administration breached the provisions of Section 43 of the Fiscal Management and Accountability Act 2003 when it failed at the end of the year to refund 755 checks totaling $771.898 million for the year 2022. As a result, the appropriation accounts were overstated by this amount. At the end of reporting in September 2023, 54 checks totaling $72.948 million had become stale dated and were still on hand. Mr. Speaker, the entire report on Region 1 is a nightmare. So like I said earlier, I'm not too fancy about the numbers budgeted for this region. We are more concerned with your accountability, your transparency, and your integrity. The citizens of Region 1 will judge you by that and not by the numbers that will be screamed here this afternoon. On page 199, commencement orders were not seen attached to payment vouchers, nor were they presented for the audit examination. As a result, it was difficult to determine the commencement dates and thus the scheduled completion dates for the contracts, something Region 1 has always been known for. And I guess my honorable friend, Mr. Colin Cole, knows this well, being the government MP with responsibility for Region 1. I wonder what his advice are when he visits those regions and speak with his colleagues of the RDC, more especially the regional executive officer. Mr. Speaker, on page 203, the audit office recommends that the regional administration should immediately desist from certifying payments for incomplete work with the intention to cut and hold a check. The regional administration should monitor the pace of works closely and encourage the contractor to expedite the completion of the works. Mr. Speaker, this is as a result of giving one man too many contracts that he cannot handle. And again, the budget building prosperity for some. It goes on, Mr. Speaker, to say, audit examination of payment vouchers and supporting documents revealed that details on the signing of the contract duration and the defects liability period could not be determined. A physical verification conducted on the 14th of July 2023 discovered that the site was abandoned and the works were incomplete, while our inspections, measurement, and calculation revealed an overstatement of $10.557 million as shown in the table below, and they have pictures as evidences of the abandoned site, Mr. Speaker. A classical picture of things happening within the Barima-Winey region. Mr. Speaker, as time does not permit me to elaborate on much more that is happening in my region, I'd like to turn my attention in closing, Mr. Speaker, to the report of the Auditor General on the assessment of the Ministries of Education Hinterland School Feeding Program. Briefly, students on page 1 not catered for due to poor planning. Meals not monitored for compliance with nutritional standards. Meals provided were not nutritious. Again, Mr. Speaker, it is not the figure that will be screamed here. It is the reality of my indigenous brothers and sisters, even at the level of the school system. Very sad. Mr. Speaker, There are other additional information that I wish to turn to, but I just want to conclude by saying, Mr. Speaker, there was during the debate when APNU AFC was in government, a very gentleman who is well known for his popular Channel at Sea comment, proposes 50% increase for public servant. In addition to that, another gentleman who is well known for not sticking to his words and becoming arrogant when questioned by ordinary Guyanese. In this very National Assembly question, with a screaming tone, what about our nurses? What about our teachers? Well, now the nurses and the teachers are asking, what about us? And he is in the position to ensure that he answers the question. And, Mr. Speaker, the question is not being answered. Mr. Speaker, finally, my final remark on Budget 2024. Budget 2024, Mr. Speaker. Final comment, yes.
Fortunately, I can't take the final comment because you're already 2 minutes over the 5 minutes, but I'll give you 30 seconds to wrap up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Let me conclude by saying that Budget 2024 is not supportive of the impoverished, nor is it favorable to public employees. I implore the members of the government to intensify their efforts in eradicating poverty, offering material support and assistance to economically disadvantaged families, especially those residing in rural areas, and to ensure that every child has access to reasonable standard of living. Budget 2024, staying the course, building prosperity for some. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. And now for the Honorable Lee Williams. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Firstly, let me start by saying the shadow opposition seems to be having mental illnesses. Why I say this? Because when they are in opposition, they think wise. And when they come in with government, they forget about the poor people. In 2015, yes, you don't know me, but I know you as APNU AFC. We disappoint with the Guyanese in 2015 when you promised a good life for all Guyanese, but you failed to fulfill your promises. Honorable Mr. Cox talked about salary increase. You promised 20% increase in 100 days. Instead, you increase your salary 50% and leave the Guyanese people on side. Honorable Mr. Speaker, Honorable Royal Ford said this poverty in Amerindian villages is an insult to us, we the Amerindians. We are not in poverty. It's you, the APNU AFC government, put us in poverty between 2015 and 2020 by snatching away because we care cash grant. If I should ask those students in front there, the age they were in 2015, I'm sure they were 4 years or 5 years in nursery grade 1 or year 2. You snatch away their 10,000 cash grant and you put us in poverty. Mr. Speaker, my good friend, Jaretta Fernandez, had a fun with numbers. But I would like to ask Mr. Honorable MP to go on the ground and see what's happening in every village of this country. There is developmentals taking place in every Amerindian village, in every region. Mr. Speaker, the opposition speaks about elites, friends, and families. Again, Honorable, I would like to ask Honorable Don Hastings to tell his colleagues that her husband is getting contract in Region 7 because he's our friends and families and the elites. So she needs to tell you that. Yes, because she's benefiting from contract in Region 7. She is getting contract from Region 7. So you need to tell your colleagues on the opposite side. So, Mr. Speaker, with that, Budget 2024 team, let's stay in the course, building prosperity for all, builds upon the previous budget that was passed since 2020 and underscores the government commitment to building prosperity for all. It is transformative and paramount to the lives of Guyanese people. It is the people-centered budget where my government, the PPPC, continues to deliver on its promises outlined in 2020 manifesto. Mr. Speaker, no doubt the Guyanese people benefited from this development in every sector, owing to my government's strategic budget allocation during their tenure in just 3 years. Mr. Speaker, yearly increases of disposable income went into the pockets of all Guyanese, from coastland to the hinterland. With this being said, I want to highlight some of the successive transformative measures that the PPPC government have done to change the lives of Guyanese, especially in the hinterland. Mr. Speaker, prior 2015, my government initiated the Because We Care cash grant, again, whereby 10,000 was given to every school child. However, after we demit office peacefully in 2015, the APNU AFC moved immediately to abolish and abandon the program, leaving parents, especially those in vulnerable situations, in darkness with no hope. As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, I can recall Honorable MP, Ms. Carletta McDonald, on her social media platform that Because We Care cash grant distribution was a waste of taxpayers' money. She continued the following year, labeled it as a political gimmick. Mr. Speaker, I want to state in this honorable house that it is not a political gimmick, but it's an investment in the nation's children, where we are taking away some of the burdens faced by parents, both in public and private schools. So fail to APNU AFC government. In keeping with our commitment of increasing the cash grant to 50,000 by 2025, the PPPC government administration increased the cash grant from 10,000 to 19,000, then 35,000, and now 40,000, an additional of 5,000 uniform allowance, giving a total of 45,000 per child in 2024. A total of 205,305 school children will be benefiting from this program, injecting 9.2 billion of disposable income into the pockets of parents, including those on the opposition bench. So we are staying the course. Mr. Speaker, the government sees education as a solid foundation for growth, and therefore investment in improving the educational infrastructure across the country. And I choose to highlight Region 7, where school buildings will be constructed and rehabilitated. Mr. Speaker, of course, Honorable, the PPPC government is committed in delivering safe and conducive learning environment, which is why, considering the volume of students at Ramadan Secondary School, in Ramadan, a new dormitory will be constructed, while a new secondary school will be constructed at Jawala, Upper Mazaruni. This will allow students to learn in a safe, spacious, and modern learning environment. And so I iterated, we stay the course. Mr. Speaker, the government has embarked on Gold Scholarship Program, which has awarded 21,000 scholarships to ordinary Guyanese. In contrast to APNU AFC track record in 5 years, in Region 7 to date, a total of 698 persons have been awarded Gold Scholarship. So I dare say numbers don't hide, we stay the course. Mr. Speaker, the PPPC government has undertaken developmental initiative in the hinterland region in the area of health, with expansion of health facilities in Region 1, 7, 8, and 9. Further, Mr. Speaker, 2024 budget provides for the construction of modern hospitals in Muruka, Region 1, Kamrang in Region 7, as well as to upgrade the hospitals in Region 9. 1.5 billion is earmarked. Also, 5 billion is allocated to retrofit health centers, health posts, and other health facilities countrywide, including the hinterland. Also, the Baltica Hospital will be reconstructed, replacing the current structure. These hospitals will be outfitted with modern amenities, including a surgical theater at Cameron Hospital to provide special care for our Amerindian people, thereby reducing the need of traveling to Georgetown for specialized service. Mr. Speaker, in 2024, the 2024 budget caters for expansion of technology into our health centers, where the telemedicine program will be expanded to additional 26 villages. This will make access to specialized care, consultation, treatment, and diagnosis readily available to the Amerindian people in their own community. This program is expected to be implemented across the hinterland region. To date, telemedicine have been installed in Upper Mazaruni Region 7, Philippi, Chinawing, Camrang, Purima, and so far there was a total of 26 consultations with patients from August to December 2023, and from January there have been 10 consultations. Mr. Speaker, the hinterland water coverage has grown from 45% of the hinterland population accessing potable water in 2020 to 75%, at the end of 2020 to 83% by the end of 2023. In 2023, 36 wells were drilled in the hinterland, signaling 1.4 billion investment. And again, I will highlight Region 7, where a number of villages are now accessing potable water. In Upper Mazaruni, several villages are now seeing running water in their homes, including Cameron, Juwala, Ramadang, Purima, while work is still in progress at Kako, where Honorable Don Hastings resides. A new well is also being drilled in Juwala that will serve the other half of the village. Government intends to achieve 93% coverage in the hinterland by the end of 2024 and 100% by the end of 2025. And so in budget 2024, a minimum of 40 wells are planned to be constructed with the budget of 1.5 billion. Mr. Speaker, my administration remains unwavering in its commitment to the First People through targeted infrastructural, social, and economic development. Mr. Speaker, 9 billion, inclusive of 2.7 billion carbon credit funds, has been allocated to further advance development in Amerindian villages across the length and breadth of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, since the PPP assumed office in 2020, the presidential grant increased significantly from 500,000 to 1 million, from 1 million to 1.5 and 1.5 to 2 million respectively, paving the way for economic growth and community well-being. In 2023, over $9 million were expended to support 243 projects through presidential grant in sectors like agriculture, tourism, transportation, among others. Mr. Speaker, in 2023, 15% of revenue from carbon credit was transferred to 242 villages, totaling to 4.7 billion, leading to implementation of around 500 village-led projects that will improve livelihood, income generation, food security, tourism, and social upliftment. Mr. Speaker, 90% of the village-led projects in Region 7 have been completed, while some projects are ongoing in various communities. Mr. Speaker, in 2024, 1.2 billion is allocated to continue direct employment and scale training opportunities through Community Support Officers Program. Over 2,600 young indigenous CSOs will be benefiting, compared to zero under the coalition government, who dismissed all 2,000 CSOs in 2015. Mr. Speaker, hinterland agriculture development is paramount to the government, which is why investments were made to provide tractors and trailers along with implements to over 200 Amerindian villages, so they can utilize these equipment to generate and improve the lives of their villages. Mr. Speaker, I want to put on record, and I'm using one village as an example, but there are other villages that are generating revenue in their village economy using the tractor and the implement. Mr. Speaker, this one village, namely Purima, has generated $4 million in income utilizing the tractor, and is projected to generate another $6 million in the next 3 months, giving you a total of $10 million in the village economic boost. Mr. Speaker, this is the vision of PPPC government, where programs are implemented for villages to sustain their village economy and gain financial independence. Mr. Speaker, the PPPC government has resumed the hinterland electrification program after it was abandoned by APNU-AFC government during 2015-2020 period. We, the PPPC government, said to the Amerindian people in the hinterland, remote, rural, and rural areas that there will be light. So there is going to be light in every home in the hinterland. Distribution of solar system has already started and nearing completion in some regions, while distribution is still going in other regions. So, Mr. Speaker, figures down high, 26,398 solar panels have been distributed to date, bringing electricity to many homes. Another 3,602 solar panels will be distributed in 2024. Mr. Speaker, upon completion, 30,000 households will benefit from reliable electricity for the first time. Mr. Speaker, my government see our young people as our future asset, and as such, government has allocated $200 million to improve community grounds so that our youth can have proper sporting facility to improve their skills. Around 23 Amerindian villages in Region 7, including Kako, has benefited from this allocation. And so, Mr. Speaker, the government will continue to invest in training and sporting facilities for young people in various disciplines. Mr. Speaker, the PPPC government continues to support development of our tourism product in Amerindian villages. To this end, 49 new tourism experiences were launched, 22 of which were launched in 2023 through successful partnership with some communities. In keeping with our manifesto, promise of promoting nature, eco and adventure tourism, culture and heritage, culinary and agri-tourism will be pursued this year. Support will be granted to the development and promotion of Amerindian villages. This will help to build the capacity towards establishing and management of their tourism enterprise through community inclusion and good governance practices to create a more diversified tourism product. Mr. Speaker, a sum of $530 million is allocated to provide opportunities for skill training, upgrading, and lifelong learning by offering competence-based training. Mr. Speaker, in Region 7, the community of Carao has received support as part of Discover Essequibo. Tourism product assessment were conducted in 2023 and found that cultural and mining tourism are worth pursuing. Packaging and development of these experiences will be done in 2024. Mr. Speaker, Purimo officially launched its tourism product in 2023, and after receiving training and support, from Guyana Tourism Authority. Importantly, Mr. Speaker, Purimo is on the catalog for international trade as a minimum 8 international trips are planned for 2024. Communities nearby, such as Philippi, Camrang, and Kako, the village of Honorable Don Hastings, are on radar for support, in which they will be improving new tourism experiences. With these interventions, incomes will be generated and will create employment opportunities for locals, demonstrating that this budget is not only for private sector, but for the local man as well. Mr. Speaker, although
We would need 5 minutes to conclude.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I would like to ask that the honorable member be given 5 more minutes to conclude his very good presentation.
Thank you, Minister Teixeira. Honorable member, you may continue
thank you, Mr. Speaker.
and conclude in 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Transformational infrastructure projects will continue across the country, including construction of roads, bridges, airstrips in every community, thereby making access easier. Our government continues to bridge the gap between the coastland and the hinterland regions through infrastructural program. And in 2023, $6.5 billion was spent to support hinterland roads in areas such as Isano, among many others. In 2024, $5.5 billion is budgeted to develop roads throughout the hinterland. The PPPC government continues to support the rehabilitation and maintenance of our airstrip to promote access and economic opportunities between the coastal and hinterland region. Work have advanced on this airstrip, particularly the Purimo airstrip, which is progressing and will be completed within a few months. This initiative is expected to boost village tourism experiences, and I'm sure similar projects in other communities will benefit in the same way. A sum of 2.3 billion is earmarked this year to complete construction of this airstrip, rehabilitation and maintenance. Mr. Speaker, there are so many success stories that can be told in this honorable house, not only in the Amerindian villages, but in every corner of the country. However, because of the time allotted to me, I cannot divulge in all. With this being said, I voice my support and endorse fully Budget 2024, which will ensure national prosperity for all, create opportunities, provide disposable income, support vulnerable groups, and improve the lives of each and every single citizen. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. And now for the Honorable Member, Mr. Mahipol. Start at 2:53. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I stand before this esteemed assembly as a passionate advocate for the people, honored to contribute to the discourse on Budget 2024. I extend sincere commendations to the dedicated public servants, especially those at the Ministry of Finance and all other ministries, regions, departments for their tireless efforts in ensuring we have this budget. Their hard work, often overlooked, forms the backbone of our public service, from doctors and nurses to teachers and disciplined servicemen and women. While the colossal $1.146 trillion budget is my primary concern today, the lack of balance in allocations, particularly towards human capital development and support for vulnerable taxpayers, leads to my inevitable non-support. As I acknowledge the importance of infrastructure, my constructive criticism emphasizes the crucial need for emphasis on human capital development for sustainable growth and development. As we enter the fourth full year under the current regime, marked by public dissatisfaction, the financial landscape projects an unprecedented expenditure of $3.332 trillion by the end of 2024. Anticipating supplementary budgets, this raises a fundamental question. What is the real impact on citizens' quality of life? It compels us to explore beyond the surface and uncover the genuine story, recognizing that this budget, like a book, demands to be read beyond its cover. Mr. Speaker, the 6.5% taxable salary adjustment, or as some prefer to call it, a decrease, stands as a disheartening chapter in our nation's history. Allow me to present figures that underscore the apparent indifference of the current regime. In 2015, when the APNU AFC assumed office, a one-time salary increase was granted to ministers of government, elevating senior ministers' salary to $870,000 and junior ministers to $696,000. It is worth noting that no further increases were provided in the years 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019. And the APNU AFC ministers left office in 2020, maintaining the same salary levels. During this period, the PPPC criticized the salary as fat cat salaries, pledging not to accept such increases and advocating for a 50% increase for public servants. Fast forward to today, and we witness senior ministers of the PPPC receiving a salary of $1,070,000 and junior ministers receiving a salary of $856,000. Since 2021, the PPPC has augmented what was previously dubbed a fat cat salary with an additional $200,000, making it an overweight or an obese cat salary. This raises a simple question to our hard-working, tax-paying citizens. How many of you received the $200,000 salary increase from 2021 to now? While our dedicated public servants, disciplined servicemen and women, teachers, doctors and nurses, the pillars of our nation, contend with the rising cost of living, government ministers sit comfortably in their offices receiving an obese cat salary. Additionally, allowances totaling $800,000, bringing the total monthly remuneration of ministers to an astounding $1.87 million. And the very people who are receiving this obese cat salary vehemently criticized the APNU AFC ministers who are receiving a fraction of that figure. Yet we are expected to be grateful for the 6.5% increase, which was taxed and claims that the public purse cannot afford more. Mr. Speaker, let's reflect on our nation's budget history, particularly its impact on hardworking citizens and the minimum wage. In 2015, the APNU AFC government, with a $221 billion budget, raised the minimum wage by $10,460, showing commitment to people's welfare. Subsequent years saw commendable increases, with the minimum wage reaching $70,000 in 2019 under our 5 budgets, bringing minimum wage to a $30,000 increase in 5 budgets of the APNU AFC. However, the current landscape, marked by the 5th budget under the PPPC regime, only delivered a meager $15,000 increase in minimum wage, despite an $826 billion budget last year. With a budget of $1.146 trillion this year, there is no minimum wage increase. This stark contrast raises concerns about the government's commitment to improving the livelihood of the working class, considering the significant strides made in the previous administration. Let history bear witness to the fact that it was the APNU AFC government that brought tangible joy to the faces of public servants through retroactive and tax-free salary increases. To our resilient public servants, disciplined servicemen and women, teachers, doctors, and nurses, I earnestly appeal to you, stand steadfast with us, for our return is on the horizon, a return that pledges to rekindle the genuine smiles that were once a hallmark of your dedicated service. In the records of our nation's financial history, a glaring anomaly leaps forth from this budget. An unprecedented $541 million earmarked for refreshments and meals, a sum that has never cast its towering shadow over our fiscal landscape before. Behold, Mr. Speaker, a grand feast laid out for the powers that be in the impending year of 2024. So, Mr. Speaker, what we have is a group of people eating lavishly with absolutely no expenses, fully protected by the state, receiving an obese cat salary, and uses their office to make their friends, families, and favorites as rich as they are. Meanwhile, the toiling masses of ordinary, hardworking Guyanese find themselves shackled by the weight of a punishing reality, striving tirelessly to make both ends meet. A sad Guyana indeed, sir. Mr. Speaker, this regime claimed that they spent $500 million in last year's budget on the Men on Mission scam. $255 million on humanitarian activities, $1.7 billion on the SLEP program, and $300 million on small business development. This year, they have budgeted another $500 million for the Men on Mission scam, an additional $255 million on humanitarian activities, $5 billion on the SLEP program, and $450 million for small business development, with over $7 billion allocated for cost of living reliefs. While these figures may sound promising, they create an illusion of inclusion. I challenge this regime to provide the public with a list of beneficiaries for the $500 million Men on Mission scam. Show us how it was spent, and you will see that it did not benefit the poor and vulnerable. Prove me wrong that it was not pocketed by the already wealthy. Show us the recipients of the $255 million allocated for humanitarian activities. Provide a breakdown of the $1.7 billion SLEP funds and disclose the beneficiaries of the $300 million small business development. This government has failed to produce proper documentation and verification of the spending of these significant sums of money, indicating that these funds were directed towards the regime, their cronies, families, and lackeys, essentially constituting slush fund monies. Mr. Speaker, had they genuinely conducted a study and honestly assisted the deserving poor and vulnerable, we would not witness widespread cries across this country about the cost of living. And from Region 1 to Region 10, people are crying out. The only individuals praising this budget are the wealthy, who don't worry about daily expenses or caring for the poor people, children. Those residing in fancy mansions with a luxury of security and lights while they sleep are the ones benefiting. This budget, in essence, serves to make the rich richer and the poor poorer. Shifting the focus to the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development, a bastion that spans the entirety of Guyana, warrants critical examination. Notably, I must acknowledge the removal of a person I deemed not only notorious, but diabolical, as I advocated for the resignation of that notorious individual earlier last year. Today, we stand in the aftermath of that demand being met, an achievement heralded by many, particularly our young indigenous boys and girls. However, the pressing question that looms is, who do we have now? Well, in all fairness to Honorable Sonia Parag, I must allow her to show what she can do. But we do note that she was no good at the Ministry of Public Service. And in all her speeches in this House, none qualifies for a passing grade. So we are not optimistic of seeing a better ministry under her leadership, and time will confirm just that. In substantiating my earlier claim that the ministry has fallen short, I present before you, Mr. Speaker, and the viewing public a litany of failures under the stewardship of Honorable Anand Prasad. Let the facts speak for themselves. In the hallowed chambers of this honorable House, promises were made in January 2023 under the banner of policy development and administration. A commitment was made to train 50 staff members in specific areas. Yet, as the curtains fell on 2023, a mere 38 staff members had undergone the promised training. The local government sector strategy, touted as a cornerstone of progress, was to be completed, yet it languished in a state of unfinished business. Similarly, assurances were given about the establishment of a local government data infrastructure, the finalization of the ministry's strategic plan, the completion of the sanitation sector plan, and the formulation of a monitoring and evaluation framework. Mr. Speaker, let it be known that not a single target within these programs was met, despite the resounding failure to deliver on these crucial commitments. The audacious claim emerges that 100% of the 2023 budgetary sum was spent, a paradox of inefficiency and disregard for the expectations of the Guyanese people. For these glaring shortcomings, Honorable Anand Prasad should gracefully exit the ministry. The people of this nation deserve a level of competence and dedication that has regrettably been absent in this chapter of the ministry's history. In preparation for political power in 2025, the APNU-AFC commits to a comprehensive and proactive approach to foster sustainable communities and harmonious coexistence. The strategy encompasses the 70 neighborhood democratic councils and 10 municipalities, including the capital city of Georgetown. The coalition plans to initiate robust community engagement programs involving residents in decision-making processes through fora and town hall meetings, prioritizing urban renewal and enhancement plans for towns. The focus extends to empowering local leaders and residents, improving critical infrastructure, and promoting economic activities. As was the case between 2015 and 2019, we will continue partnership with enterprises and NGOs and international organizations seeking to leverage resources for infrastructural development. The coalition emphasizes an organized approach to maintenance and repair public assets and aims to stimulate local economic activities, support small businesses, and attract investments in alignment with local economic priorities. Initiatives include sustainable agricultural practices, environmental policies, waste management program, and renewable energy projects, educational and healthcare facility improvements, technological solution for service delivery, and transparent budgeting practices will also be prioritized. Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, during our tenure between 2015 and 2020, we had to clean up what was left there for 23 years. But now we are in a better position because we know the foundation that we laid, and we will come back and we will do much better. Mr. Speaker, by focusing on these key areas and fostering a culture of collaboration, innovation, and inclusivity, we would aim to lead the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development in building sustainable, resilient, and harmonious communities across Guyana. In short, Mr. Speaker, we would not be a Dharamlal. We would not be a Parag. We would not be a Passad. We will simply be champions. Mr. Speaker, the Local Government Commission is currently, in its current construct and composition, is a national embarrassment to our country. And without a doubt, the Local Government Commission Act of 2013 needs to be amended earliest. That commission that is currently heavily politicized is doing no good. We need a local government commission that will scrutinize the appointment of local government officials to ensure a merit-based and transparent selection process, provide oversight to prevent corruption, nepotism, and abuse of power within the local government bodies, investigate allegations of misconduct or malfeasance by local government officials, and take appropriate actions, act as a neutral mediator in disputes between local government bodies, officials, and residents, facilitate conflict resolution, processes to maintain harmony and effective governance at the local level, and address grievances and complaints in a fair and impartial manner. We don't need a commission that is biased and employs political lackeys of the PPP, as in the case with the employment of the Linden Town Clerk, Tushin Eiflot Overseer, and Typist Clerk, among many others. Mr. Speaker, I must bring attention to a matter of grave concern regarding the National Procurement and Tender Administration and its board, NPTAB. The legislation governing this body demands urgent re-evaluation, if not outright repeal, to be replaced with a more contemporary framework that upholds the principles of fairness and equality among contractors, devoid of political interference in the allocation of projects. A glaring example that demands scrutiny is the allocation of billions of dollars for the construction of 4 pump stations at Bellevue, Metamierzorg, Podrine, and Jimbo Grove. While the public witnessed a substantial number of bids for each of these projects, 26 for Bellevue, 27 for Metamierzorg, 30 for Jimbo Grove, and 23 for Podrine, the subsequent award of contracts raised eyebrows. In a puzzling turn of events, when inquiries were made regarding the decision-making process, it became apparent that the lowest, most responsive bidders were not granted the contracts. The National Procurement and Tender Administration Board defended their actions, citing that out of the 26 bids received, 13 were deemed non-responsive, particularly in the case of the Metamierzorg pump station. However, the situation became even more alarming when examining the Jimbo Grove and Bellevue pump stations. Astonishingly, the NPTAB acknowledged that the second lowest responsive bidder and the third lowest priced responsive bidder were awarded the contracts from the same 26 bids received for the Metamierzorg pump station. This admission wordlessly confirms that the lowest responsive bidder for the Jimbo Grove and Bellevue pump station were disregarded. The lowest, most responsive bidders were disregarded. This re-evaluation raises serious questions about the transparency, fairness, and integrity of the procurement process overseen by NPTAB. It is imperative for the government to recognize the evident flaws in this body, characterized by potential mismanagement and a departure from the principles of meritocracy. Many contractors complain bitterly to us about almost on a daily basis. And yes, there is a measure in the Procurement Act to address contractors' complaints, but that is basically putting those fat cats over there to watch milk. Mr. Speaker, let us not fool ourselves. In the interest of good governance and the well-being of our nation, it is paramount that we collectively address these concerns and work towards the establishment of a revamped, accountable, and impartial procurement system. The current trajectory, with its potential for further deterioration, warrants immediate attention and decisive action to restore public trust in the procurement and tendering processes of our beloved country. As I stand at this microphone, I cannot let the unfolding drama surrounding the Public Accounts Committee escape unaddressed. The Honorable Bishop and Teixeira, in their attempts to justify their conspicuous absence from PAC proceedings, frequently assert that the opposition's desire to expedite examinations is the root cause of the issue. They argue that the 2019 fiscal year remains untouched by the National Assembly's scrutiny, conveniently pointing out that the current PAC has convened more frequently than its counterparts in the 10th and 11th Parliament, spanning from 2011 to 2020. Allow me, Mr. Speaker, to reiterate a truth that has been spoken before and will continue to be spoken. the PAC of the 12th Parliament explicitly agreed in one of our meetings that Mondays would be our statutory meeting day. This decision was not arbitrary. It harks back to the tradition of previous PACs that convened on that particular day. Notably, the PAC of the 11th Parliament was chaired by His Excellency the President when he held the position as a member of Parliament. Back then, the quorum requirement, as it remained until April 2022, was any 3 members. The infrequent meetings of that PAC contributed significantly to the quagmire we find ourselves in today. From 2015 to 2020, the PAC only managed to complete one Auditor General's report, the 2015 report. When we assumed control in December 2020, we had to pick up the pieces from the Auditor General's report of 2016 in the year 2021. It's worth noting that all previous PACs could have afforded to meet less frequently because they were up to date with the examination of the Auditor General's report. The PAC of the 10th Parliament, chaired by the Honorable Carl Barrington Greenwich, is a perfect example, which diligently completed Auditor General's report for the years 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, and 2014. This occurred despite the prorogation of the Parliament, lasting just 3 years. In stark contrast, the PAC of the 11th Parliament had a full 5 years, but managed to complete only one report. Now, in its 4th year, this PAC has seen changes in quorum requirements, completed just one report, the 2016 report, and grapples with difficulty convening due to the reluctance of 2 government ministers to have the 2020, 2021, and 2022 Auditor General's report scrutinized. Roughly 30 meetings had to be cancelled.
I remember, you've had 3 infractions so far. The last one is an imputation on the 2 ministers, right? You can impute. So the other 2, I will say, when you mentioned those fat cats over there, the standing orders are quite clear that you refer to members on the opposite side as honorable or comrade, right? And then there was an earlier one with respect to the use of term. So let's continue. You're going well so far.
Thank you, sir. Roughly 30 meetings had to be cancelled due to this obstruction. Yet the PPPC expects us to believe they champion transparency and accountability. The solution is straightforward, Mr. Speaker. Either we revert to the previous quorum requirements, or the 2 ministers must yield their seats to others, less purportedly busy members from their side. They are experienced individuals like Honorable Jennifer Westford and Honorable Dr. Berry Ramsaran, and others who seem to do nothing more than occupy seats in this house. However, it appears that...
You're imputing. You're calling 2 honorable members as seat warmers. Come on.
However, it appears that the Honorable Edgell and Gale, by title, believe themselves superior to their counterparts, but yet lack a fundamental understanding of their responsibilities at the PAC. It's time to navigate beyond these political theatrics and refocus on the core principles of accountability and diligence in the service to the Guyanese people. Mr. Speaker, I must address the harsh reality affecting Region 3, specifically focusing on the island of Wakenham, a stronghold of the People's Progressive Party Civic. Noting the time constraints understandably imposed on me, my colleague, Honorable Beverly Allort, will focus on other communities. During our time in government, Wakenham witnessed a significant development, including 100% asphaltic concrete roads, extensive sea defense projects, street lighting, a fully functioning hospital with 2 resident doctors. The agriculture sector thrived with fair equipment usage, and the police operated without political interference. Educational facilities were upgraded, and access to services became more efficient and equitable. However, the current state of Wakenham is alarming. The hospital lacks a resident doctor, leading to incidents where 4 individuals in the most recent past were declared dead by a nursing assistant, and the mortuary struggles to accommodate bodies. 2 dangerous PPPC brothers on the island exert control over the excavators, police operations, hospital management, and fund distribution, favoring only selected PPPC supporters. This unfair treatment and malpractice inflicts hardship on ordinary Wakenham residents. I urge the people to reflect on their choices as they hold the power to rectify this situation. If the status quo persists, the people must recognize their role in creating these issues. To bring about fairness and proper management, I implore them to make the change and vote for APNU AFC the next elections, shifting towards improved governance for Region 3 and the entire nation. The state of Lenora Cottage Hospital is a testament to the neglect under the PPPC's watch. Oddly, the head of this hospital sits comfortably in this house, but like a backbencher, reading from a script, she can only utter praises for the PPPC. God forbid she voices any criticism. She knows she'd be replaced in the blink of an eye. That's
In the blink of an eye, we need an extension.
Thank you. Thank you, Comrade Speaker. Comrade Speaker, I move that the honourable member be given 5 minutes to conclude his presentation.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Whip. Honorable Member, you may continue.
Thank you, sir. That's the PPPC modus operandi. Papa Jagabat's word is law, and any dissent will exile you to a corner to rot. It's time to expose the charade and demand accountability for the neglect and mismanagement in region number 3. Mr. Speaker, in a $1.146 trillion budget, there are alarming reductions in capital expenditure for education delivery across 8 regions. None of us wants a situation like the one we had in Madhya. But going forward, any regional challenges must be attributed to the Education Minister, who approved this budget with significant cuts in capital expenditure during a cabinet meeting. Similarly, for health services delivery in regions 4 and 7, there are reductions, reinforcing our stance that this regime lacks interest in human capital development. This budgetary approach raises concerns about the government's commitment to providing adequate resources for essential services, potentially impacting education and the health sectors in various regions. Mr. Speaker, in wrapping up, it is abundantly clear that this current regime, wielding power, must rise above its lackluster performance and do right by all our citizens. The tiresome narrative of enriching the elite while penalizing the ordinary and vulnerable segments of our society must come to a screeching halt. This incessant boast about having the grandest budget in our nation's history, yet yielding little substance for the ordinary citizens, it is nothing short of a bitter pill for the masses to swallow. But fear not, my fellow citizens, for my message to you is straightforward and resolute. We possess the collective power to rectify this situation. All it requires is the removal of the PPPC from the seat of authority. We've done it before in 2015, and for those glorious years, smiles adored the faces of our people. During that time, we bestowed upon the business community the focus and recognition they rightly deserve, all while judiciously balancing decisions to uplift the working class and vulnerable among us. We established a robust accountability system that resonated even with contractors who found the satisfaction in the transparency of the tender board's operation. Our unwavering dedication to community development, education, health, infrastructure, social protection, and the overall well-being of our people was unmatched. The present administration's feeble attempt to measure up to our past accomplishments fall woefully short. Upon our triumphant return to office, we pledge to rectify the multitude of wrongs inflicted by this apathetic regime. Guyana under our watch will not just grow, it will flourish. The PPPC may celebrate in its brief power, but the indomitable spirit of the Guyanese people will prevail. Together, we will usher in an era where the concerns and aspirations of every citizen are not just heard, but addressed. It's time for a brighter future, and that can only happen when the PPPC is consigned to the archives of history. I thank you, sir.
Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, I'm asking that the reference to two PPP brothers on the island of Wakenham who are PPP leaders be expunged from the record. They are identifiable and they are not in the house to defend themselves.
I don't agree with you. Speaking about PPP persons, I can't identify them.
PPP brothers on the island of Wakenham, sir,
Yes.
are identifiable.
And secondly, the only thing I was about to, before I call on the next speaker, the other infraction which the last speaker made was calling the name of the former minister of local government who is not here to represent himself. That was identifiable in my regard.
Mr. Speaker.
At now 3:29, I now call on the Honorable Anand Prasad, Minister in the Ministry of Local Government.
Mr. Speaker, I would first of all like to rebut a statement that the Honorable Ganesh Mahipal uttered in his speech, and to say to the Honorable Member that my colleague Sonia Parag and myself, we are ministers of this government. I know what you and the members on the opposition side will be. I took an oath on August the 2nd, 2020, to work hard to ensure that the rigors, the electoral rigors of the 2020 elections will never ever get power again in this country. Myself and Minister Parag, along with my colleagues, led by Dr. Mohammed A. Fanali, has been working hard day and night for the people of this country. And we will continue to do so. Mr. Speaker, In a few words, let me describe this $1.146 trillion budget presented under the theme, Staying the Course, Building Prosperity for All, as good, pro-people, pro-development, pro-infrastructure, pro-business, pro-welfare, and pro-poor. This budget is fiscally balanced and shows how we plan to manage our financial responsibility in a prudent manner. I say without fear of contradiction that this is the most comprehensive, well thought out, and down-to-earth budget that the Senior Minister of Finance has brought to this august House on behalf of the People's Progressive Party civic government. By bringing this budget to the House, we have outlined our vision to continue staying the course, thereby ensuring prosperity for all. Of course, even with all resources, this PPPC administration has not lost and will not lose sight of the goal and purpose, which are to have better financial management of all resources, including oil and gas, to catapult Guyana's development while making up time for lost dark ages under the APNU AFC rule. Similarly, this PPPC government will accelerate and sustain the growth which we have achieved so far by making sensible decisions and careful planning based upon grassroots information. From 20-year-old Navin Singh of West Coast Berbice, 50-year-old Michael Bryan of Victoria East Coast Demerara, 38-year-old Shalini Fraser of Linden, Region 10, to 18-year-old R.K. Sharma Singh of Region 2, and 76-year-old Samantha Ignatius of Region 1. They confirm that this budget offers hope and a path to prosperity while staying the course. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to some measures in Budget 2024. Mr. Speaker, the PPPC government brought this budget in very troubling regional and international times, when the Caribbean and the world are still grappling to put their economies back on solid footing. After the damage done by COVID-19, there are two wars happening at the moment, resulting in food shortages and scarcity of resources. In sharp contrast, Guyana is blessed to have bountiful resources that the PPP government is exploiting for the human and infrastructural development. I shudder to think, if the other side were in power, they would have exhausted Guyana's wealth, taken it 4 steps backwards into bankruptcy and financial ruins. Mr. Speaker, never, never, never again. Let it be remembered that the APNU AFC had an atrocious record in office. In 1992, when the PPPC government took office, every single sector was in the red. Total bankruptcy. Mr. Speaker, we built this country back and struggled with our people all the way to financial viability. When they got into power, here again, when they would have gotten back into when they got back into power, here again went on a rampage of spending up all the monies in the treasury. Forestry, education, gold, bauxite, tourism, health, and finance, to name a few, were all struggling. In 3 years' time, Dr. PPP was healing the sectors, bringing them back to financial viability while making sound and well-calculated investments in our people. Mr. Speaker, this is progress. Mr. Speaker, this is growth. Mr. Speaker, that is vision. Now, Mr. Speaker, the PPPC government has once again come up with key measures which we will implement to keep our economy along the right path. Budget 2024 does not promise the public that it will significantly increase old age pensions within the first 100 days of being in office like the coalition did. As a matter of fact, the APNU AFC had a deceptive manifesto, empty and nothing for all. Mr. Speaker, according to Guyana Times newspaper and Kaito News, March 31st, 2015, they promised significant increases to pensioners. We know that the AFC APNU only increased the pension by $1,475 on average per year. The APNU AFC administration, whilst increasing the pension by $1,475 on average, thus like thieves in the night, took away the pensioners' water and electricity subsidies. The pensioners were left with nothing. They ended up paying millions more. If this is not sad, then I don't know what is. The senior citizens are still waiting on the newly remodeled centers or homes and other reliefs. That APNU AFC promised them during their tenure in office. Shame, shame on those riggers.
Honorable Minister, you need to withdraw those shames and stop using that word.
And so I do, Mr. Speaker. That is the APNU AFC legacy and indeed sordid record in office. So don't come here now to lecture the PPPC on addressing issues regarding the senior citizens. Mr. Speaker, compared to that of the dark period, this budget offers the seniors a more practical and realistic increase. We have steadily increased the old age pension that moved up from a shameful pittance that AFC APNU gave to seniors to $25,000, representing a $4.5 billion investment in 2021. It was later increased in 2022 from $25,000 to $28,000, placing another $2.3 billion of disposable income in the hands of our elderly. In 2023, the PPP gave a further increase from $28,000 to $33,000, and this budget makes allowance for $36,000. Mr. Speaker, this represents a 75% increase. Mr. Speaker, I don't think any sensible Guyanese would fault our government for making sustainable decisions for our seniors who have benefited from $14.1 billion more this year than 2020. Mr. Speaker, let me say pellucidly, this budget 2024 is jam-packed with projects and policies which are geared towards improving the lives of the ordinary Guyanese in the short term and, more importantly, long term. Those opposition seat warmers who criticize and focus on Budget 2024 are visionless, hopeless, and backwards thinking. The government aims to build household prosperity, community prosperity, and national prosperity with Budget 2024. Mr. Speaker, perhaps the APNU AFC MPs are not sure what position to adopt in relation to the budget, other than the old rhetoric of corruption, racism, and discrimination. After all, they are still battling among themselves to decide who should be their leader. Because blank check, the Honorable Aubrey Norton, is too busy visiting Bam Bam Alley and socializing with the bottle. Mr. Speaker, only this morning, I was browsing Facebook and came across a newsroom post, and I quote, "Norton hints violence at general elections." In the same post, the Honorable, but in fact, should I say Honorable?
Minister, let's stay away from that because you're going to use a source that's not acceptable in media reports to impute on the honorable leader of the opposition. Stay away from that.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to remind, and refresh members of APNU AFC of a song, "This Time the Long Time." It was also mentioned that should the APNU AFC return to power, well, Mr. Should, Budget 2024 sets the tone for Budget 2025 and beyond. While they're fighting, Mr. Speaker, the Honorable MP Desir and Ford et al., according to an opinion piece I read in the Chronicle newspapers and online, are busy teaming up with others in and out of the National Assembly, the discard of their current leader. Mr. Speaker, so their story is bitter. It is sour. The bitterness continues for those on the opposition benches and is proven to attack their psyche and thoughts about the budget of all the people's business. I rather suspect this is why the APNU AFC politicians went on Nation Watch and a PR campaign trying to discredit the budget. Mr. Speaker, we do not want to be in the same category as the APNU AFC administration or party. We are different. We plan for the present while looking ahead. Mr. Speaker, should we build another Durban Park? Should we have a barbershop fiasco? Should we have another drunk and pissing and shaking of genitals scandal? Or should we have another jewelry, bangles, and computer scandal? Mr. Speaker, I want to remind this House of the Chronicle and the UG funds fiasco involving two honorable members of this House. And I'm proud this afternoon to know that we have students from various schools present, and to remind this House that the Honorable Ganesh Mahipal used funds from the UGSS committee without any authorized approval. That, for me, amounts to misappropriation of funds.
Honorable Minister, using without permission, I don't equate them. So take out the last part.
Okay. So I do, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to remind this House also that it was Sherrod Duncan, the honorable member, who also misappropriated funds from the Guyana Chronicle, over 20 questionable transactions. And guess who freed him? Who dismissed him? The honorable member, Geeta Chandan. Mr. Speaker, we have a country to run of 83,000 square miles. We are too busy working. Mr. Speaker, our energies are firmly set on building and improving communities in a timely manner while improving on our infrastructure in line with our development policies for a modern and just Guyana. Mr. Speaker, in the budget, you will see $10 billion for the continuation and expansion of the part-time job program. This is in addition to the creation of employment for 196 persons via the job bank last year and 863 over 3 years. Over 9,000 people have gotten into jobs directly and indirectly because of this PPPC administration astute policies. Additionally, to address the issues plaguing UG, this PPPC government will look at addressing the student loans and cost of young people's tuition towards making education available for all. Mr. Speaker, we plan on increasing the monthly income tax threshold from $85,000 to $100,000, making 13,000 persons being removed from paying income taxes, which will result in a $4.8 billion increase in the disposable income of workers. $7 billion allocated for measures to be determined after consultations with stakeholders aimed at maintaining production while containing the impact of the price increase. This is not how the 2020 electoral riggers, namely APNU AFC, hit the $18 million signing bonus. Mr. Speaker, in the meantime, we will implement initiatives which will help the people survive the cost of living. After all, the PPP is and will remain a pro-poor government. Mr. Speaker, the PPP is determined to increase public assistance from $16,000 to $19,000 monthly, more than doubling the public assistance since the PPP resumed office. This will increase disposable income of over 35,000 persons. Mr. Speaker, we would recall the rigors of elections of 2020. The APNU AFC government had 2 ministers handling the portfolio of education, for which my colleague, the Honorable, the beautiful Priya Manichan now has sole responsibility. There were two round pegs in square holes. Mr. Speaker, more than 135.2 billion has been budgeted to further realize the government's vision of world-class education. Added to that, the PPPC administration proposes to increase the Because We Care student cash grant from $35,000 to $40,000 to benefit over 205,000 school children in public and private schools, placing an additional $1 billion in the hands of parents. This is after the treacherous and vengeful politicians in the APNU AFC coalition who axed same, but had the nerve to fortify themselves with the fat cat and hefty salary increases for friends, favorites, family of the APNU AFC government. Shame. In health, Mr. Speaker, we propose to spend $129.8 billion, $78 billion to further develop housing infrastructure, and not forgetting $22.5 billion has been budgeted in the water sector for further advancements. $2.7 billion has been budgeted for the continuous development of culture and arts, while $4.6 billion has been allocated for sports. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2024 provides a sum of $1.1 billion to advance youth development initiatives. I pause here to address something the Honorable Opposition Leader said in the social media. The Honorable Member said he does not think this government is serious about youths and young people. Mr. Norton should be the last person to express this sentiment and should hang his head low, really low, very low. I'm going to remind this House of his record on youths and children. The APNU AFC downsized the Youth and Sport Ministry into a department. A whole Ministry of Youth was not in existence during their tenure. Little or very little investments, if any, were made in young people's development, and hardly any importance was given to see them excel. There are no scope for young people to be part of the decision-making process. Then at the level of the APNU AFC government, they shattered the dreams of young people, relegating them to nothingness. Mr. Speaker, as the saying goes, fool me once, shame on you, but fool me twice, shame on me. I say this is no country for old men who only have dreams to offer. This country, under the PPPC, is a place where youths are thriving and have a say regardless if you're African, Indian, Chinese, or mixed. Mr. Speaker, the old must give way to our young peoples. The PPP administration believe in and reward our youths. Training and our youths with training and jobs. After all, they are our leaders of tomorrow in a modern Guyana. Mr. Speaker, I heard only the other day that the Honorable Member Norton relegated and berated one of his politicians on that side of the House, the Honorable Mr. Figuera. I saw you sat there on that side of the House all alone. And I brought a picture, Mr. Speaker, if they want to refute same. Mr. Speaker, I want to categorically state that on record as saying that our first peoples, who have always been on our side through good and bad times, will not be forgotten by this PPP administration. We will continue to work for the development and the improvement of their livelihoods in healthcare, education, and agriculture, to mention a few. This budget is Amerindian indigenous friendly and is geared to ensure that money flows from the national coffers straight into the villages and communities of Amerindians and indigenous peoples. This year, Amerindians will have the National Two-Shows Council Secretariat building to host meetings and discuss key issues at a total cost of $147.8 million. An amount of $100 million will be provided in 2024 to support the hosting of the NTC conference, and a further budgetary allocation of $800 million to support the land titling program. Mr. Speaker, the PPP administration believes in real development of our Amerindian people, letting them decide their own paths. It is already known far and wide that we care for our Amerindian brothers and sisters. That is why we invested our time and work to ensure that they are paid for sale of carbon credits, which will further enhance their communities. Mr. Speaker, local democracy and regional development are the cornerstone of the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development. The PPPC had to rebuild democracy, which was wrestled away from municipalities and neighborhood democratic councils by the APNU AFC government. Mr. Speaker, this government is focused on building institutional assistance to foster accountability in each community across Guyana. We want to have transparency and accountability in all the municipalities and neighborhood democratic councils. This government has been advancing the infrastructure development and enhancement across communities in the year 2023. Mr. Speaker, this year, we will provide direct cash assistance through subventions of our local democratic organs. In 2024, $1 billion is budgeted to be transferred to LDOs as subventions. This means that we will be ensuring that each LDO deliver on their work program. Mr. Speaker, additionally, over $50 million is budgeted for the rehabilitation of LDO buildings in various communities. Some of these buildings are were falling apart under the watchful eyes of the then Ministry of Communities, and nothing was done. The Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development will ensure that these subventions will be spent with the strictest adherence, because in the end, it is the communities that will suffer. Mr.
Thank
Speaker,
you, Minister. For you to conclude, you need an extension of time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to ask that the honorable member be given 5 minutes to conclude his very good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Teixeira. Honorable Minister, you may continue.
Mr. Speaker, this year, the PPPC government will see the construction of 3 bridges from Wanaina to Wauna, the construction of bridge and timber revetment at Barima End Access Road, and the rehabilitation of the Morocaico Road. Mr. Speaker, the progress continues in Budget 2024 with the construction of health huts at Tobago, Bamboo, Aranca, Eyelash, Triangle, and Wanakai, and the construction of living quarters at Mabaruma Hospital. Mr. Speaker, I trust the APNU AFC is listening, Budget 2024 will make provision for the construction of revetment at Hague and Kingston Cokers, the construction of RC Bridge at Hague, and rehabilitation of bridges at Schoonhoven and Carricaria will also take place. Mr. Speaker, let me say that in this budget, the PPP plans to construct plans for the construction of revetment at Mahaika and Enmore, construction of timber sluice door at Buxton, and construction of bridges and Second Cross Street, Mahaika. Rehabilitation of Mabukuri Cattle Bridge and the construction of Meadows living quarters at Platenka Health Center and the purchase of an ambulance are also planned. Mr. Speaker, we will see the upgrading of a section of Wowetta Road with asphaltic concrete. Mr. Speaker, staying the course and building prosperity for all in this budget, we'll see the PPPC government in Region 10 rehabilitating bridges at Dawala. We will rehabilitate creek roads at South Amelia's Ward, Lewis Street, Wisrock, and upgrade the roads at Central Amelia's Ward, Success Avenue, among others. Mr. Speaker, it's no secret that Guyanese saw hope restored to this country, and every citizen has witnessed unprecedented economic growth in every sector in a rapidly transformed new and modern Guyana. This PPP government has demonstrated its vision and leadership in ensuring a plan of action to attract private investment, improving infrastructure and social services, and providing opportunities and improving the lives of all Guyanese through the creation of jobs and the creation of opportunities for all to grow and enjoy a comfortable life. Mr. Speaker, a budget of $1.3 billion is allocated for the completion and rehabilitation of markets, including Hydroni, Leonora, Charity, Monrepo, Comaka, Sadi. This initiative is part of the government's effort to improve the selling and shopping environment. This catalyzes economic growth. Unfortunately, Parika, Charity, and Curvaton markets were ravaged by fires. As a result, the government began reconstruction of these facilities. Mr. Speaker, Guyana's First Lady, Ari Ali, has initiated projects to develop multipurpose parks in Region 3 as part of the National Beautification Project led by her office. This park is located at Tushin, East Bank of Essequibo, and is aimed at enhancing community spaces and providing residents with recreational and sporting facilities. In 2024, the ministry will be moving to upgrade existing dump sites to environmentally accepted landfills, developing and operating waste management facilities, along with advocating the 3R initiative: reuse, reduce, recycle. This budget, Mr. Speaker, is good for Guyana and good for development. I want to again state that these budgetary allocations, along with the spirit and letter of this budget, will be commended to this House. Mr. Speaker, we must not celebrate the past and present, but I want to reach out to my colleagues on the opposite side of the House to join us to celebrate the future. It is our future in which we will find our greatness. I wish to commend this budget to the House with the words, stability towards prosperity.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. And now for the Honorable Member, Ms. Coretta MacDonald, to make her presentation.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to make my contributions to this 2024 budget. Mr. Speaker, my colleague who spoke before me, and I'm calling him colleague because we have a mission to do. While he spoke about the 18,000 US, he forgot to mention the making of a scapegoat of an ordinary public servant with a 211 million US dollars. Which, Mr. Speaker, was written off. And even the minister claimed that he did not know who authorized the public servant to do that. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the opposition leader, the Honorable Captain Aubrey Norton, for allowing me this privilege to do what I have to do here. But Mr. Speaker, as we debate this budget, we must remember that quality education is the most powerful tool to realize opportunities. A tool children can use to end poverty and unemployment, despite their circumstances of birth, race, geography, or gender. The Ministry of Education, Mr. Speaker, has a mandate that is critical to the nation's development. And that is, if managed properly, it is a glorious opportunity for the nation. But when mismanaged, it is the disaster we find ourselves in today. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2024 was delivered under the theme, Staying the Course, Building Prosperity for All. A quick glance at this budget will reveal, Mr. Speaker, that there has been a daring misplacement of this theme in the history of presentations in this House. As a natural consequence, the budget needs to be rethemed and bear the title, Staying the Course for the Elite Friends, Families, Favorites, and Flatterers. Building prosperity for the PPP cronies. There is nothing here to transform the lives of teachers or change their sad working reality. This budget has once again confirmed to the teachers that their work is not valued by this government, and that the only hope lies in ensuring that they can get registered and prepare to return the coalition government to power. Mr. Speaker, the minister has lowered his office by delivering to us a shameful intellectual opportunism for 5 hours. The honorable member has confirmed that this government is in trouble by stretching statistics, numbers, and percentages to their thinnest to make this government look good. The honorable member dabbled in the dark arts of spinning numbers and narratives. This, Mr. Speaker, is the same skill of stretching the dollar in the case of the teachers and mothers in Guyana at the moment who have been forced to master the art of stretching food and money to their thinnest to survive in this elitist economy. If this budget, Mr. Speaker, was delivered as an assignment in any classroom, it would have been given an F grade, and the author's parents would have been called in. Mr. Speaker, the honorable member has lost credibility when he sought to mischaracterize the 2020 elections and failed to mention that the documented evidence indisputably shows that it was and it is still the People's Progressive Party who set this nation on a path to pain and national stress in December of 2018, when a parliamentary coup was launched against the coalition government. It is Guyana on a path of 2 years. It set Guyana on a path of 2 years of pain and distress, where school children were attacked. Mr. Speaker, policemen were chopped, and nurses returning from work had their cars destroyed, all at the hands of the PPP. Mr. Speaker, the hard documented evidence is not going anywhere. Mr. Speaker, valid ballots changed to rejected ballots. Rejected ballots changed to valid ballots. Electors voting with oath of identities not listed on the official list of documents, and I can go on and on and on. Mr. Speaker, as we continue to go on, this would have culminated in Guyana's first installed regime. And here we are, the fifth budget by a regime that does not reflect the will of the people. The budget reflects the thinking of a government who believes in the trickle-down economics, which means fattening the ruling class and hoping that they would pass the wealth to the bottom. Hence, Mr. Speaker, the education sector and teachers cannot expect much from this kind of government with that outdated thinking. Mr. Speaker, education is in trouble. And one can surmise this, Mr. Speaker, that education is not a puppy show. Education is a critical sector. But what have we seen? We have seen gloating in quality and not gloating in quantity. And that gloat has landed us in the crisis that we now find ourselves in. Mispronunciation of words at several forums, both locally and internationally. Mr. Speaker, not knowing where to put the word she, whether to say it's a preposition or a pronoun. The many fights among students, Mr. Speaker, education is in trouble. Mr. Speaker, the disrespect that has been meted out to teachers from learners, parents, and education officials. Mr. Speaker, to illustrate the grand failure of this budget for the education sector, it is necessary to compare what we did while we were in office and what this government has done this far. Mr. Speaker, under the coalition government, the incomparable Minister of Finance, Mr. Winston Jordan, on a path of unprecedented levels. During his tenure, the Honorable Winston Jordan, former minister, presented Budget 2020-15 to this House in August. It was entitled A Fresh Approach to the Good Life in the Green Economy. In January of 2016, the minister presented again to this House a budget entitled Stimulating Growth, Restoring Growth that Beckons the Good Life. Mr. Speaker, and I can go on and on to tell us about what the good life the people of Guyana lived under the coalition. These budgets, Mr. Speaker, reflected the philosophical thinking and providing a good life for all Guyanese. Mr. Speaker, that remains the strength of the budgetary allocations for education that was made under the watch of the coalition. Importantly, sir, the 5 budgetary allocations for the education sector by the People's Progressive Party is the fact that money is being thrown to a ministry that continues to suffer the worst under the leadership that we have seen in education. Mr. Speaker, since time immemorial, the Ministry of Education has been preserved for learned technocrats who do not significantly and overtly dabble in politics and campaigning every day of the school year. The proud tradition has been maintained by all past ministers of government of education: Barnum, Baird, Chandy Singh, Bisnot, Gaskin, Henry, just to name a few. The reason that the Ministry of Education is normally staffed by a technocrat minister is to avoid a critical aspect of national development from being politicized. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, education is now well politicized. Today, the Ministry of Education is saddled with political leadership that is solely focused on the advancement of the party and not the welfare of our learners and our educators. Mr. Speaker, educational leadership is a collaborative process that brings together the skills and abilities of teachers, parents, the learners, their communities, and by extension, the government, thus ensuring that change is guaranteed by improved performance. This has to be the sole focus of a Minister of Education, not to sit and campaign every day every second of the day on a smartphone. Mr. Speaker, 68 Brigham has been so politicized, just like many other departments of education, where you have political lackeys with fat contracts who are clueless about education. They are now in charge of the ministry. Mr. Speaker, could you imagine our University of Guyana, 60 years old, has been given $4.1 billion, while a 3-year-old Guyana Girls Scholarship Program has been given $4.1 billion. It's a shame that we have our university here and we don't seek to promote and to build what we have.
Member, I love the first one to go. This is the second time you're using it.
I'm guided, sir. While the experience, Mr. Speaker, the departments of education have been politicized, while the experience and technical education personnel have been sidelined. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, the budget can allocate trillions and zillions to this sector. Once the situation remains the same, education will continue to fail and the crisis will continue. Mr. Speaker, when we look at what is happening in our schools, it leaves one to wonder. When we look at the videos that are circulating with fights, etc., it leaves one to wonder what is happening in education. But we seem to be saying, Mr. Speaker, that buildings seems to be the solution to the problem. Then if buildings were to be the solution of the problem, Mr. Speaker, then there would be no need for a Ministry of Education. There would be need for 2 ministries of public works. Mr. Speaker, therefore, this budget will not and has not done anything for our people in education. Sir, the reason that we have not seen the articulation of any clear education policy is because we hear the razzle and the dazzle on social media noises, but there is no mechanism to measure performance and programs. Mr. Speaker, a Minister of Education should not be versed in the art of cuss out and abuse out. A Minister of Education should oversee the drafting of policies and institute performance measures and conduct monitoring and evaluation systems. Sir, the effect of this wanton politicization is seen in the data. Even though Guyana boasts of a 90% literacy rate, educational literacy remains at an estimated 40%. Mr. Speaker, 55...
Mr. Speaker,
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
you began this process by saying there should be decorum. And you have a member of parliament over there describing people as dangles.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, please. You have to stand on a point of order with due respect. And I didn't hear the honorable member, Ms. McDonald, violate the present business we run.
Can you keep it?
Children, don't follow that thing.
All right, you have protection of the chair, you'll get back your time.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Speaker, just to remind the honorable member on the other side that with the Honorable MacDonald, I'm an adult and we usually have consented arrangements. Unlike the Julius arrangement. But Mr. Speaker, 55% of our students at the secondary level are failing English A. Mr. Speaker, 37 students are failing mathematics at the grade 4, are passing mathematics at the grade 4 level, 37%, while 63 of them are failing mathematics. This data is dismal. And despite the razzle and dazzle of a few high achievers and cutting the ribbons for brand new buildings, education still remains in crisis. This is the result of sheer politicization and incompetence. Mr. Speaker, the dangerous effects of this level of incompetence can be seen if one examines the Education Sector Reform Plan 2021-2025. The plan is premised on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which Goal 4, which states ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. This plan is entitled, is entitled Eliminating Illiteracy, Enhancing Tolerance and Modernizing Education. The aim of the ESP is to contribute to employment and the reduction of poverty by increasing performance at all levels and reducing the disparity between subgroups. Mr. Speaker, based on the standards set out by this plan in the year 2024, the benchmarks have not been met, and it is safe to conclude that the billions thrown to this sector have missed the mark. Within the 3 years of the billions being thrown to achieve the sector, to allow the sector to achieve its aim, Mr. Speaker, so by the mechanism outlined, there is dismal failure at the level of the ministry. Mr. Speaker, based on this reality, we have no confidence that the $135 billion that has been allocated to this sector in this budget will move or change the dismal data that haunts the education in its current state. As usual, Mr. Speaker, the money will go to the friends, the family, the favorites, and the flatterers, and the entire crony class. We have not seen a single report with outcome measures that provides information on progress towards desired results in the key areas. The effectiveness of programs impacts on clients. There is no intermediate outcome measures that show some desired outcomes, and those results may not be known for several years. This only happens when a ministry is run by a person who is politically driven. Mr. Speaker, we must follow international best practices and standards and place a competent person with experience at the classroom or elsewhere at this ministry before it's too late. Unless this happens, Mr. Speaker, the budget allocations for this sector are an exercise at throwing monies at incompetence. Mr. Speaker, the aforementioned politicization of the ministry has led to false narratives being peddled at the level of the minister. Chief among the false narratives is the suggestion that the APNU AFC did not start or complete a single secondary school. Sir, let me say from the onset that one of the reasons the ministry is busy building secondary schools or constructing secondary schools is due to the fact that since the PPP were installed in August of 2020, there has been the mysterious burning of secondary schools. There is a school of thought that the cronies must be constantly fed, and as the pie is divided up amongst friends, families, cronies, and flatterers, there will be none left, and attention is now turned for an opportunity to create another hustle. Sir, this never occurred under the coalition government. So there was no need to constantly construct secondary schools. Mr. Speaker, what we did during our tenure in office is there for all and sundry to see. Let's not forget the Cato secondary fiasco. As early as 2016, works started on many primary schools and nursery schools across Region 2. These projects have been estimated within the millions. Mr. Speaker, undertaking the executions of these policies would have improved the educational facilities and the lives of students and teachers in the Pomeroon-Supernam region. Mr. Speaker, there were extensions at many schools, and these are all there for us to see. Further, Mr. Speaker, there was a $1.9 million that was invested in schools construction and repairs. This was the mess that the APNU AFC had to clean up when we took office in 2015. There was the rehabilitation of the living quarters in many areas. Teachers were able to live comfortable. Students were able to live comfortable in their dorms. And parents were happy that their children were safe. Under the coalition government, Mr. Speaker, without the benefit of oil money, there was the construction and the rehabilitation of schools, I must say, everywhere. There was no mysterious burnings under our watch. So there, again, was no need to build schools at that time. But under the watch of this minister, there have been the most fires in the history of Guyana and the region. Mr. Speaker, the minister seems to believe that the building of schools or the construction of schools is the solution to all of the crises that we are facing. It therefore means, Mr. Speaker, that the issues that we face in education, they must be addressed. When we look at the need for improved quality education, no attention is being paid there. Mr. Speaker, providing teachers with a livable wage, no attention is being paid there. Mr. Speaker, providing the resources and the environment that is conducive to teachers teaching and the children learning. And if we want to be factual, let's look at the St. Gabriel's nursery school, where up to a day like today, the flooring is still sandy and dusty. And you know what they did? They took vinylin to cover that. Cheap labor, but big contracts. Mr. Speaker, we fail when we want to duck our heads in the sand and pretend that these aren't happening. Mr. Speaker, under the watch of the minister, there has been again, let's go to the Madia fire. Sir, chief among those fires, sir, among those was the saddest event in the country's modern history. The gross incompetence at the ministry, which we constantly refer to, would have cost this nation the loss of 20 beautiful indigenous children, the lives of 20 beautiful indigenous children in Region 8. This man-made disaster, Mr. Speaker, in normal society would have resulted in wanton resignations and firings, but not under the watch of the People's Progressive Party. Instead, what we have is the usual denials and attempts to escape responsibility by the Ministry of Education and the minister, while scapegoating of the regional education officer was done. Mr. Speaker, prior to that incident, prior to that fire, UNICEF and the Guyana Fire Service had submitted reports to the government of Guyana warning about the safety of dormitories across Guyana, and also submitted recommendations to correct the risk. The ministry ignored these submissions. The government made matters worse when it sought to escape paying compensation to the families of those victims and established a commission of inquiry after incessant calls by the coalition. This uncaring behavior continued when the government appointed a COI without independent international commissioners. The COI, Mr. Speaker, has completed its work and the report has been presented. Mr. Speaker, we were not confident that this report will place the blame where it needs to be, squarely at the feet of the ministers. Sir, the doctrine of ministerial responsibility is clear. It is a fundamental constitutional principle in the Westminster parliamentary system, according to which ministers are responsible to the parliament for the conduct of their ministry and government as a whole. Ministerial responsibility, Mr. Speaker, is central to the parliamentary system because it ensures the accountability of the government to the legislature and thus ultimately to the public. We suspected, Mr. Speaker, that the report would have been crafted to suit the political aims of the regime. In the interest of the victims, their parents, the people of Region 8, and the general population, we will continue to call for an independent probe and a fair and proportional compensatory package for the victims and their families. Mr. Speaker, we reiterate the next coalition government will review this matter and make proper restitutions that fully respect the full scope of the loss of lives and grief experienced by those affected. Mr. Speaker, the budgetary allocations to the education sector reflects a vision of reflects the lack of a long-term vision. The allocations covered under this, the allocations covered are construction, distribution of textbooks, national school feeding program, the purchase of textbooks, the University of Guyana, the Gold Program, an arrangement with Cursor, ICT training for students, support for technical and vocational training. Some of the aforementioned are necessary, but Mr. Speaker, Guyana's largest budget has to be made with much stern and grand vision. On that consideration, I now direct my attention to the COVID-19 pandemic and its effect. Technically, the pandemic has not disappeared, and reports suggest that the virus is making a return. Sir, if one examines the national consultation final report, you would appreciate concerns that this budget does not include a clear program that considers the fallout of the pandemic. Yeah. The report noted that Guyana risks losing between 0.9 and 1.1 learning adjusted years of school per student on an average, due to the elevated dropout rate and learning loss. If not addressed, it is estimated that there will be an average reduction in future earnings of $791 per student per year. The present value of all future lost earnings across Guyana is estimated to be at $1.2 billion. More sensible countries, Mr. Speaker, have announced huge catch-up programs. Chile has detailed a 4-year plan to catch up learning losses from COVID, not Guyana. Currently, there is no budgeted national catch-up plan. This concerning data behoves any planners of the country's fiscal direction to include plans to address the effects of the pandemic and place the nation on a path to cushion the next disaster. Insofar as this budget, it doesn't cater for that, and it has dismally failed. Sir, according to companies overseas, Guyana's had an internet penetration rate of 37.33% in 2017. What that means was that less than 40% of Guyana's population then had access to and were using the internet. Data Reportal, an online platform which summarizes third-party data to illustrate trends and provide insights, indicated that of January 2020, 55% of the population of approximately 430,000 persons were using the internet. Comparatively, the Caribbean region has a 60% rate internet penetration, while South America has a 72% rate. One of the main issues encountered during the pandemic was the problem of the access to the internet. Where is the allocation, Mr. Speaker, in the largest budget to address this problem in the event that we are forced to take education fully online again? Sir.
Honorable member, we will need to give you an extension to conclude.
Thank you, Comrade Speaker. I do move that the honorable member be given 5 minutes to conclude her presentation.
Thank you, honorable member. 5 minutes to conclude.
Sir, long-term and strategic planning requires a greater vision. UNESCO submitted that there is no doubt that ICT can impact learning in a significant way, but that must also be cautioned in a significant way, but also caution that teachers must be computer literate. This budget should have included a program for teachers to address the use of technology for teaching purposes in every sphere of this country. In the context of the oil and gas revenue, ICT can play a significant role in the delivery of education. But Mr. Speaker, the teachers must be crucially a part and equally involved in this process. Mr. Speaker, the literature notes that ICT can result in positive transformation for the delivery of education, but it has to be buttressed by teachers who are computer literate, not some, but all teachers. But the sad reality is that once you have a minister who is focused solely on scoring political points, these things will not be considered. Mr. Speaker, the University of Guyana is under attack. If there was any question about this budget and the Vice President has removed all doubts from our minds. There is no other assessment to make. Mr. Speaker, again, imagine our university, and I must repeat, imagine our university, 60 years old, is allotted $4.1 billion, while a 3-year-old is allotted $4 billion. What a travesty and unpatriotic move by the caring government, the PPP. Mr. Speaker, the PPP doesn't want the University of Guyana to grow because they are fearful that it poses a threat to their controlled freakism. Over the years, the university has emerged as an important institution that indirectly checks the government and its excesses. The physical attendances lead to the congregation, Mr. Speaker, of students in societies. They discuss the world, and invariably, students leave the university conscious and more educated. Added to this, Mr. Speaker, they sit in classroom with lecturers who teach them how to think critically. This is the fare of the People's Progressive Party. that they cannot control the university, and what they cannot control, they do not fund. This is the same fiscal treatment that the Georgetown municipality receives. It is the same treatment, Mr. Speaker, that the Critchlow Labour College receives. It is the same treatment, Mr. Speaker, that IPADG receives. And then we want to talk about a caring government. Well, somebody is hiding somewhere because they don't understand the meaning of caring. Mr. Speaker, the PPP has always viewed the university as an institution of resistance, and for that, they must be punished. And this budget, Mr. Speaker, this laid bare in the presentation of Budget 2024 with the $4 billion allocation to the newfound Guyana Online Academy of Learning. While we welcome any chance for Guyanese to be qualified and to add to their resume, we must remain concerned over this approach. The government, Mr. Speaker, has pushed to online education. The government's push to online education should be coupled with the development of the university. The two objectives can be combined. On one hand, we can develop UG and at the same time move to online learning. It is unacceptable that the university's funding is now equaled to an academy of learning that is under direct political direction. This would have been the perfect opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to fund the University of Guyana and make it into a world-class institution. As there is no monitoring and evaluation of the Gold Scholarship Program, our research has uncovered major issues with the Gold Program. Nobody knows where the ranking...
So you'll have to wrap up in half a minute.
Mr. Speaker, why would the government throw $4 billion to a program without for students? Mr. Speaker, Budget 2024 is funneled and fixed between the Treasury and the pockets of friends, families, cronies, and flatterers of the People's Progressive Party to allow the oil money to flow into a small circle without a single drop of the oil money escaping to reach the people at the bottom of the society. In its current state, Mr. Speaker, I cannot support this budget.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. And now, as Honorable Minister Anand Prasad has described her, the beautiful Minister of Education, Honorable Priya Manikchand.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Speaker. I take this opportunity to welcome our young people, the students who are in here. I hope you're seeing both what you want to be and not what you do not want to be right in this house, and that you are going to pattern your own presentations accordingly. It is important to be able to make arguments that are sensible and practical and constructive and will contribute to the development of your country without becoming ad hominem. For the member who just spoke, that means personal. I want to also congratulate warmly the Minister of Finance and his team, and the President and Vice President who contributed to the crafting of this budget, a budget that is going to see Guyana progress, Guyana develop, and Guyana develop rapidly. Mr. Speaker, education, the role of education in a developing country like ours is critical. It equips individuals with knowledge and skills and critical thinking abilities necessary for economic progress and growth. By investing in education, a developing country can empower its citizens to break the cycle of poverty, drive innovation, and contribute to nation building. Education fosters a skilled workforce, promotes social cohesion, and enhances democratic values. It is the key that unlocks the doors of opportunity, paving the way for a brighter future for individuals and the nation as a whole. Any government who understands this, sir, would invest in education, and that is what the PPPC has been doing and doing consistently. We've heard the vacuous statements about their budget not catering to development. The OECD countries, Mr. Speaker, that's the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, give about 10% of their budget to education. Guyana, on average, Guyana is giving more than 13% in this budget. That is investment in our people. The total expenditure, and we have seen repeatedly how that investment benefits the people of this country. We know that Guyana ranks high on the Human Development Index. That's the UN index that measures the standards of education and health and overall well-being in a country. Guyana is now positioned, and they have said very clearly that we're doing better in education, that we're doing better in health. That investment repeatedly over the years, sir, has moved us from 30% of our children being able to access secondary education in 1992 to 78% when we left office in 2015. And unfortunately, when we came back in 2015, the same 78% because you didn't build a single secondary school in this country. It moved us from about 33% of our teachers being trained in 1992 to now 99% of our teachers trained or in training. Those are the numbers, those are the facts, those are the deliverables. That is how we measure. It moved us, the World Bank said, sir, in 1993, from a 67% of our people living in poverty, that's 67 out of every 100 persons living in dire poverty, to 38% in 2008, half the number of people living in poverty. That's what investment, sensibly done, does. And Mr. Speaker, the honorable member before me spoke of an education sector plan, and I'm very happy she had one to speak of. The only time this country went without an education sector plan that was published from 1993 to 2015 to now is the 5 years that APNU was in office. They did not have a sector plan. This is the government. They said they're the party who could plan and project and measure, and they didn't even have a sector plan. But if the honorable member could have read that in a way that allowed her to understand it, what she would have seen is that the deliverables and the measurables are right there in the sector plan. And I will give you some results, sir. The honorable member spoke about some grade 4, which doesn't exist anymore, and something else, 30-something% in English, all fake, all false, and we'll throw those numbers up just now. But these are results. Arthurville, so let's take primary. Arthurville Primary moved from 36% in 2022 English to 50%. They moved from 50% mathematics to 83%. They moved from 29% science to 50%. And then let's take the hinterland. Aishalton, pass rate moved from 22% to 67%. Anai, the pass rate moved from 19% to 58%. Sand Creek, the pass rate moved from 15% to 60%. This is measurable. And when we talk about these numbers, we mean more people, more children passed. More children are going to be able to access opportunities and thrive in this build out that we're building in Guyana. Mr. Speaker, I was curious. I was curious at some of the heckles when the budget was being presented and at some of the talk shows that are happening. And the conversation I'm no longer curious because the honorable member just made it very clear what her party's position is. The APNU, AFC holds the view that there is no need to build any secondary school because they have enough. And I wonder what Don Hastings, honorable member, has to say about that, where children in Jawala and Kopinang and the Upper Mazruni do not have a school to go to. I wonder what Mr. Region 9, Henry, honorable member, has to say about that. When Awaranow and Mawaranow and Karasabay and Shia and those kids don't have a secondary school to go to. I wonder what the Region 1 MP, whoever it is over there, what the Region 1 MP has to say when the children of Quebana and Barama River and Warramuri and Porsororo don't have a secondary school to go to. Is that your party's position? When I left office in 2015, we needed 7,000. When I left office in 2015, we needed 7,000 seats for secondary children. That means, my young friends, the children your age don't have a school to go to. That's what we left. When I came back to office in 2020, we needed 7,000 seats because the APNU AFC failed, neglected, and refused to build a single secondary school in this country. Did not start or finish a single secondary school in this country, punishing children like you right here on the coast and in the hinterland regions. So, Mr. Speaker, we have to begin by having access. Apparently, the thing is, if you have a fight, you got fights in schools. Apparently, that's a new phenomenon. You got fights in schools. You have cameras in schools now. That's the new phenomenon. But the thing is, we have fights in schools. Apparently, their solution to that is not to have a school. So if you don't have a school, you can't have a fight. Apparently, that's the big fancy solution. Mr. Speaker, in the last 3 years, remember I said I met 7,000, the need for 7,000 seats. In the last 3 years, we have provided 4,575 children of this country, Amerindian, African, East Indian, Chinese, Portuguese, with seats in a secondary school. How could you not support that? How could you have a criticism for that? And how could you stand here and barefacedly tell this nation that you don't think those 7,000 people need seats in a school? That should have you all hanging your heads and resigning today, because you have declared that you have no intention of educating the children who cannot be seen. And your Amerindian...
All those views are directed.
They are, sir. I'm looking at them, but I'm really speaking to you.
Yeah,
you, sir, the honorable member, sir. Mr. Speaker, let's begin. We built the Abram Zool Secondary School, the Williams Secondary School, Westminster Secondary School, Good Hope Secondary School, Yarracabra Secondary School. We extended the East Drumville Secondary School, St. Winifred Secondary School, Queen's College, Bishops, St. Rose's. By doing that, we provided 4,575 seats for children who hitherto did not have seats in school. And this year, Mr. Speaker, this year, we're going to be finishing the Hosororo Secondary School for 700 children, which will take care of the Mabaruma catchment, Hosororo, Wauno, the Riverine schools. 662 children did not have access in this area to secondary education. That's what you found, that's what you left, and you couldn't care less. Because like you said, it's a waste of time. Why are we building schools? In the Northwest Secondary, we're going to finish that school this year. It's going to cater for 850 children. Quebana Secondary, way up Region 1. I'm hearing them, where is Quebana? Of course you don't know where Quebana is, because the people of Quebana are not important to you. 500 children, Maruka Catchment, Quebana, St. Nicholas, Barama Rivers, Winey River School. Region 7, we'll be building a school in Jawala, which will cater for 500 children. That's the Upper Mazaruni, Kako, Jawala, Camarang, Philippi. You have members in this house who are from those villages who should have gotten up when you said that building schools are not important. When the honorable member that spoke before me, that said building schools are not important and they're not going to solve any problems. They should have gotten up and made their objection known. And by not doing that, the entire APNU AFC has adopted that position. Region 9, we're building Karasabay, that will take care of 500 children. And in Georgetown, we're building the Christchurch Secondary, North Rhymeville Secondary, St. George's Secondary, St. Mary's Secondary and extending to St. Stanislaus Secondary. We will also be building a school at Prospect on the East Bank and begin the building of Christianburg in Region 10. $28.7 billion was allocated towards construction, rehabilitation, and maintenance of school buildings. So, Mr. Speaker, we're unapologetic. Every child in this country, whether you're from primary, secondary, nursery, whether you're from the deep hinterland or the coastland or here in Georgetown, whether you're from an APNU stronghold, if they have any left, or a PPP stronghold, every child in this country will be able to access education under the PPPC government. And I hope we have heard what the APNU position is and what our position is. And we say that without apology, students. Even as we build schools, and we are also building 6 primary schools that are large primary schools, Mr. Speaker. Those are going to be done at Reg Dorsey in Region 3, Tushen in Region 3, Tapachinga in Region 9, Wisrock in Region 10, Kuradaya in Region 1, Diamond at Second Diamond School, Primary School, because we have extended and expanded our housing program. We have large communities and settlements going up in places. And we now need primary schools also, although the UN has declared us as having attained universal primary education. Even as we build the physical infrastructure, Mr. Speaker, even as we build the physical infrastructure, we're very conscious, very cognizant that like the rest of the world, and particularly us here in the Caribbean, we have to change the quality. It has to improve. We'd like to see our children do better. We'd like to see them learn differently. We'd like to see them leave with more critical thinking skills. What are we doing to change the quality of education? Mr. Speaker, let's begin with the training of teachers. Last year, 1,796 teachers graduated from the Teacher Training College, giving us the largest number of teachers trained ever in the history of Guyana. Hitherto, before that, the number of teachers that could be trained was only 535. We quadrupled that amount, which means you will have a better quality as well as more teachers in the classroom. From 2020 to 2023, 3,198 teachers were trained. Mr. Speaker, particularly in the hinterland where we have the biggest problem with quality. And the problem sprang from the fact, chicken and egg, the problem sprang from the fact that we didn't have trained teachers in the hinterland because the program didn't cater for that. So let me give you what that picture looked like in 2019. In 2019, we had 31, in 2019, to be clear, Honorable Speaker, we had 31 teachers from the hinterland, regions 1, 7, 8, and 9, 31 teachers training. Under the PPPC, we have 1,011 teachers from those same villages training. Trained teachers will go back into the school and make the children do as well as you will do. They will give the children the same quality that our children out here on the coast are getting. So when we speak about wanting better for people, our actions must match our words. You had 31 teachers being trained in the hinterland. We have 1,000 teachers in 1 year being trained in the hinterland. That is love for people. That is love for children. Additionally, the CPC has implemented some new programs. Literacy is going to be implemented. A special major in literacy is going to be implemented in 2024. A special program in special education needs was implemented. HFLE is going to be implemented. Portuguese is going to be a major for the first time. French is going to be a major for the first time. Music is going to be on the ADE, Associate Degree program for the first time. PE is going to be on that an ADE program for the first time. And visual arts is going to be on that program for the first time. So, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, additionally, let us be clear. The PPP was very clear. We give each teacher who is being trained in the teacher training college, a full salary of $90,000. The APN, you gave $10,000 to those teachers. We are giving $90,000 to each teacher. And in addition, Mr. Speaker, we heard how badly off teachers were. Here is what teachers are getting under the PPPC. We've trained the number of years where a teacher could now become senior from 7 years to 6 years. We've added more senior vacancies across all schools so more teacher can become senior. We've reduced the records that teachers are required to keep. We're paying $10,000 for each teacher with a degree. So Ronald Cox, when you finish that gold degree, you can get a 10,000 more. The gold, same program that you all don't want other people to do. 1,796 teachers were trained in 2023. 1,900 will be trained in 2024. 1,500 teachers will be trained in 2025. All senior teachers above 52 are going to get a duty-free concession. All senior teachers above 52 will get a duty-free concession. Increased payment for teachers with a master's degree. Increased payment for teachers with a doctorate. All teachers on the GOLD program will be paid for their new qualifications. Unlimited number of teachers allowed to attend UG. It used to be a very limited number before. 99% of all our teachers are trained or in training. We gave for the first time in the history of this country, we gave teachers money to buy their cardboard and chalk and school supplies that they need. They needed it in 2018 and 2019 too, but you didn't give a cent. We've increased the stipend for trained teachers. And so a trained teacher under the People's Progressive Party, at say a St. Margaret's Nursery School, and we have a recently retired head teacher that is from there. Starters Nursery, we're grateful for her years of service. In 2019, was taking home $227,000. In 2023, is taking home $316,000. That is growth, along with all these benefits. And the teachers, we have two heads of departments in here, one from St. Joseph, one from Northwest, or secondary school teachers, if not head of departments. In 2019, was taking home $210,000. In 2023, $289,000, and all these benefits, But Mr. Speaker, don't listen to me. I have a reason to say these things. Let's read from September 4, 2018, the Guyana Times. Teachers got more under the PPP government, the Guyana Teachers Union. And this picture looks remarkably like the speaker who came before me. She's changed her hairstyle, but it looks like her. And it said, the teachers' strike continues, and the Guyana Teachers Union has said the nation's educators had received more under the People's Progressive Party than what they currently get under this this coalition administration. GTU General Secretary Coretta McDonald, who has been at the helm of the leadership of that union and would have sat in several negotiations with both the previous government and the current administrations, made this statement to teachers on Monday. McDonald told scores of teachers assembled at the GTU auditorium at Wilford Avenue that it was under the PPP that teachers for the first time received additional benefits apart from a salary increase, quite like those I was reading out just now. They received these new ones last year. If we look at what transpired under the PPP government when they were in power and what is transpiring now, and she had to pause because she was gasping at what was transpiring then. Remember, we didn't want the 5%, we made noise about it. But with the 5%, we got a whole lot of non-salary benefits from the glorious People's Progressive Party Civic. She said, so loud applause from the large gathering of teachers. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to lay this over to refresh the memory of the honorable member who now seems to be forgetting what she actually said and what the truth actually is. In addition, Mr. Speaker, in addition to building schools and training teachers, we're going to change quality. Mr. Speaker, we are providing in this year's budget, we are providing textbooks and exercise books to the tune of $2.9 billion. Over the last 3 years, it's $8 billion that we provided in textbooks to our children. And each child will get all the textbooks they need and exercise books that are of a better quality. But here is what we came from. Here is what we came from. Because when you stand here to speak, you must stand on a record, Mr. Cox, honorable member, through you, of course, sir. In the area of textbooks, and we were talking about Auditor General's reports, here is what the Auditor General said for the period 2017 to 2019. The ministry spent millions to purchase textbooks, yet failed to supply 71% of the population with textbooks that were required by the schools. 71%. It's just quite shameful. Shameful. And we're talking, well, disgraceful, sir.
Yeah.
Disgraceful. And Mr. Speaker, it went on to speak about how over $998 million worth of textbooks were to be purchased. I don't think this is the audit report that spoke of when the AP and UAFC bought billions of dollars in the wrong textbooks. Wrong textbooks. And then we must ask where those textbooks went and who got to resell them. Who got to resell them? When we talk about friends and family and crony, but I don't get personal. I never get personal, but you go and do that research for yourself. Mr. Speaker, additionally, on the issue of quality, the children these days, this, Mr. Speaker, it is true, Mr. Speaker, that some exercise books had the wrong information. Because we went out to a public bid, not something the honorable member is familiar with, given that they used to hand this out to friends and family, and hand it out to the GNPL, who would then source it to the friends and family of Trinidad. Here are the articles in the Kaieteur News when you did that. We went out to public bids. This is a public advertisement. And when people, the printers, we hope that mistake won't be made this year, but our contract will be changed. When the printers retyped, they got it wrong. And we were upset, but we weren't going to stop giving the books. We asked the teachers to use it as a teaching and learning process and correct what was wrong. This year, our contract will be different, and it's going to say anyone who prints inaccurate information that was not given to them will stand the cost of the repair themselves. So we're not going to duck and hide from this. We given the books you never gave. You never gave the books. Right? And Mr. Speaker, and I also want to point out too, this issue that has been raised repeatedly today about friends and cronies. Every procurement done by the Ministry of Education, and I'm prepared to put my head on the block for this. Every procurement done by the Ministry of Education is done in accordance with the procurement laws. These are publicly advertised. People bid and the NPTAB evaluates. So even if they were to say, and I heard the vacuous, idiotic statement about us burning schools. First of all, the AP and UAFC is on record as saying the PPP burned these 2 schools so they could give their friends this land space. The schools are going up now. So they have dropped that one, and they said it's to give people the contracts. These contracts were publicly advertised, and people publicly bid, and they won the contract. Mr. Speaker, we're also helping our parents by increasing our provision to school children for their school feeding, breakfast. Mr. Speaker, this year, this budget allows us to give every single child in the hinterland, nursery, primary, and secondary, a meal, either breakfast or lunch. Every single child in the hinterland will get a meal this year. This budget allows us to give every grade 6 and every grade 5 child a hot meal for breakfast. And this budget allows us to give every grade nursery to grade 2 child 45 biscuits and juice. This is the same population, sir, the same children whose parents had the same jobs. I would like to pause it and pose a question to Mr. Henry, honorable member, and Mr. Hastings, honorable member, and their colleagues about whether children in the hinterland weren't hungry in 2018 and what was done during those years, 2019 to feed them, what was done in 2016 to feed them. Now you wake up and you find out that they're hungry. And when we're trying to provide a meal, you want it to be your meal. Well, let me say this. The communities will have a firm say in what meal is provided. So if you come from the coastland and decide that you do not want Amerindian children to eat cassava bread because it doesn't have your nutritional value, I tell you now, we will rubbish that contribution. Mr. Speaker, this budget will allow us to add 42 schools plus 234 schools in grade 5. Adding a total of 19,000 additional children who will get meals in the hinterland. Mr. Speaker, we heard earlier about something that I really want to address. And I really don't know how much more disappointed I could get. Any person in Guyana, or anywhere else in the world for that matter, young or old, who wishes to pursue an education should be facilitated as best any government can. Any single person. The PPP's Chetty Jagan started the University of Guyana, and Barry Ramsaran will tell you when he started it, the PNC called it Jagan's Night School. It is now our University of Guyana, and we will fund it and continue to fund it, and it's very precious to us. It is very precious to us. Mr. Speaker, when we left the University of, Mr. Speaker, when we left the country, when we left the University of Guyana had, we left fees, it was $160,000. It was $160,000. When the APNU went into office in 2016, Mr. Speaker, it raised by over $70,000. This is an article from the Guyana Times. After increasing tuition fees, UG to now increase fees for services. And it goes on with a lovely picture of the University of Guyana. Less than 1 year after, this is an example of what I was telling you don't do, this kind of market behavior. After less than 1 year after the University of Guyana approved a 35% incremental increase on tuition fees under the APNU AFC, the institution on Wednesday approved increased fees for their services set to be implemented from March 2nd, 2018. 2018 was under the stewardship of the APNU AFC. I will lay that over, sir, and hope that you circulate it to the National Assembly. And then there was another article, sir, UG students bemoan increase to administrative fees, where the students were begging, the UG students were begging for relief. And the APNU AFC was silent. They ignored those pleas, but we now know why. We now know why. Mr. Hamilton this morning told us why. Mr. Speaker, let me say very, very clearly. Coursera is different from GOAL. GOAL is different from the University of Guyana. It's important that we understand what they are. Coursera is a series of short courses offered to the people to upskill or reskill through various hundreds of universities, renowned universities like Harvard and MIT and Princeton and Oxford and Cambridge. Those are the Coursera courses. And when Guyana offered Coursera in 2020, Mr. Speaker, you know what's painful? The Commonwealth of Learning was begging the APNU AFC to offer Coursera in 2020. In March, they didn't. Trinidad, Grenada, Antigua, Barbados, they all did. They all did. The APNU AFC was engaged in the enterprise of trying to stay in government by rigging an election. So they didn't launch it. We launched it in September of 2020. And true to character, so it's a pattern. the AP and UAFC jumped on the program and advised people not to do it when they themselves were doing Coursera programs. They told the nation not to do it. Mr. Speaker, there are public posts with that. And then
And with that, we need to get an extension for you.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask for the honourable member to have much more time, but I'm forced to, based on the agreement, to ask that we shall have 5 more minutes to conclude our excellent presentation. And I know that she could speak for another hour easily.
Mr. Speaker, Guyana recorded, our little Guyana, with our people, recorded the highest enrollment in the Caribbean, Africa, Asia, excepting for India, and on the program, leading Dr. Asha Kanwar, then President of the Commonwealth of Learning, to say, I have never seen something like this, the appetite of Guyanese to study and a government who facilitates that. And that is on the public record. I would recommend a few courses for you, Mr. Duncan. And then, Mr. Speaker, came the Guyana Online Academy for Learning. And let me say very quickly what that is. The goal is just a medium through which other universities are engaged. So Ronald Cox is not studying at Gold, the honorable member. He will tell you, gather with him when you go outside to eat and ask him. He's not studying at some place named Gold. He's studying at a renowned university in a foreign country online, and the government of Guyana is paying for that program. So when you say we're paying friends and families, it means we have these 17, 18 universities as friends and families. And if Ronald Cox, you are a friend and family, by the way, I think you should come over here because they clearly are very envious of you. And there are 1 or 2 members there who don't have what you have. And that might be why they want to take it away from you. A good example is the member who came just before me. And Mr. Speaker, this goal scholarship offered so far 21,442 Guyanese people. Black, Indian, Amerindian, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, male, female, from the coastline, from the hinterland, opportunities to study. And they are studying, and they are graduates of the program. And then there is GROW. And I want to talk quickly about GROW. GROW is a program done on the goal, which allows people who dropped out from school or didn't get a chance to finish school, perhaps because of your poor management in the 5 years, want now to be able to enter a university. 430 of them graduated from GROW. Of that, 1,172 have begun their degrees. 81% of the people who graduated, who before couldn't even enter university. We've given them the opportunity to go, and they have begun. And Mr. Speaker, I want to say, GOAL is being funded by the government, the PPPC government of Guyana. The University of Guyana is being given $1 billion more than last year, being funded by the PPPC of Guyana. And the PPPC will continue to offer opportunities, whether they be courses or certificates or degrees or masters or PhDs, to as many people that want it, and we will not apologize for that. We will not apologize for it. And Mr. Speaker, lastly, because I know my time is running out, well, second to last, the honorable member, in this year's budget, $28 million is set aside for rehabilitation and maintenance and construction, and that we intend to continue to rehabilitate dorms. But I want to read from this report, sir, the Madhya Commissioner of Inquiry report. Mr. Speaker, this is what the report says. We learned, am I going to get back my time, sir? We learned that in 2015, the then Minister of Education, Dr. Rupert Roopnarine, commissioned an inquiry to conduct an assessment of the education sector in Guyana. According to the report, which was tendered before us, entitled Commission of Inquiry into the Education Sector of Guyana Preliminary Report, the objective of the inquiry was to establish the baseline analysis of the state of public education in Guyana and to provide recommendations of broad strategic guidelines for the enhancement of public education. The commission tabled its preliminary report to the minister on the 28th of April, 2017. The whole cabinet had it. The report placed high emphasis on the deplorable state of student dormitories and made recommendations that they should be addressed. The 2017 APNU-AFT Cabinet got these reports. It stated that attention must be paid to the level and quality of supervision in dorm facilities. However, the CEO told us an audit was conducted into the education sector during the period 2015 to 2020 under the auspices, and the audit made the recommendations that were never implemented. So, Mr. Speaker, we get opportunities ever so often in our professional life, in our personal life, to stand up for the people of this country. We could be opportunistic and prostitute ourselves on the altar of dishonesty, where we think we could get cheap votes, or we could stand up and face some of the hard questions. This Ministry of Education expended 98.9% of its local capital last year, capital budget, and 99% of its recurrent budget. And we're going to be able to expend this year for the betterment of people. But I want one last thing. You see me, sir. You see me in the newspapers because that's the nature of the system. The ministers photographed. What you don't see is the people behind me, some of whom went home 1:30 on New Year's morning. You don't see the professionals who slave in their offices, Mr. Speaker. The PPP was in office, and we never, ever brought into disrepute public officers the way the honorable member before me just did. You can't say you love teachers, and when I promote teachers to the position of leadership in the ministry, of leadership in this country, you in this National Assembly exploit your privilege and abuse them. Mr. Speaker, my staff, the very credible, experienced, educated, learned staff of the Ministry of Education, and I will take this program further. We'll take this program forward so that the children of this country could be the leaders of Guyana and could compete here in the Caribbean and in the world. I thank you all.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, this is a good time to take a half-an-hour break and let us cool down.
Rise, not a blade of grass. So we ain't giving up no mountains. We ain't giving up no tree. We ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. We are a peaceful people. Struggle is we struggle, and we don't look for trouble. Just ask around. But when outside faces from foreign places talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. We ain't giving up no mountains. We ain't giving up no tree. We ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. This land is all I know. We gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow and never break. Our fathers came here